Now, we all know Bindi. She's been involved in agriculture for a fair while, and especially in controlled traffic farming. She grew up on a farm at Kojonup. She works 2 days a week for the department as a development officer and the soil compaction project. She's had 15 years experience in ag research and extension in WA, working for DAFRA in Katanning and Geraldton, as well as North Stirling's Pallup Natural Resources Group, Natural Resources, which is a grower group at Borden, and Precision Agriculture. She's developed an extensive knowledge of controlled traffic farming and precision agriculture, working on state and national projects. This includes writing the Controlled Traffic Farming Technical Manual in 2013, which is a revised version of the original tramline farming manual she wrote in 2003. Where's Rob Rewalt? Who said there wasn't a Bible for controlled traffic farming? We've had one for years. So all this talk of machinery means that she's now got tyre kicking down to a fine art. Please make welcome Bindi.
I'm not sure if it's a Bible or perhaps it's just the First Testament, and the rest of you are going to help me write the next one. Well, hopefully it's not me, actually. I guess in the last 6 weeks I've travelled a lot around the state, from Exmouth to Wildcatcham, Corrigan, Wagen and back up again. And I think something that's been really obvious as I've driven around is the incredible variability that we have in climatic conditions in WA at the moment. We've gone from drought, frost I believe, flood and waterlogging. So we've got everything in WA, and I guess as farmers or as advisors, that's the one thing we can't do. No matter how good we are at managing things, we cannot control the weather, and we can't control the rain that falls out of the sky that's going to make us money. And that's really why we're here today. The one thing we can do is help improve the resilience of our system, and that's where CTF can help. And I guess today why I'm here is to just bring to mind that when you're developing a CTF system, you need to consider runoff and wheel track management. And I'll say up front, I'm not sure how I ended up doing this presentation because I'm not an environmental engineer. But what I have is a lot of experience working with Paul and Department of Agriculture on GRDC projects over the years. So I've been able to collate all the information and research that we know that's been done across Australia from Queensland to WA on surface water management. And with the help from some of my friends, Paul Galloway and John Simons, some of the few hydrologists we have left in the department, and Quentin Knight from Precision Agronomics, using his experience with farmers, we've been able to put together some information that I hope will be helpful and will help you go home and develop a system that's for your farm. Because that's one of the challenges with CTF and surface water management, even if you're not a controlled traffic farmer, is that it's going to be unique to your farm, and it's going to depend on your climatic conditions and the actual slope of the landscape. So why am I here? Well, in February, as many of you know, we had an incredible amount of rainfall, and there was some significant flooding and erosion damage. And it was pictures like these from down at Ravensthorpe that were plastered everywhere and all through Twitter, the media, and came over my desk saying CTF's bad, CTF causes erosion, we don't need to do CTF. But what you need to keep in mind is we're going to put this in context, because yes, it happened, and it was devastating for those farmers that it did happen. When you think you're onto a good thing and it rains and it ends up like this, that's a really hard thing when you think you're going down the right path. So what happened here is it was a huge rainfall event. There was 300 millimetres over 4 days, so that's greater than a 1 in 100 rainfall event. And when we design surface water management systems, we actually only design for a 1 in 20 year event, because to design for more than that, it can be incredibly expensive and complex. So there does come a point where we're going to have big rainfall events. But reality is, if that amount of rain actually moves a bridge, it's going to move erosion. And erosion is a natural part of how landscapes formed. And it's important also to keep in mind that it wasn't just CTF where there was erosion. And this is a pretty mild example off Twitter, but I'd have to say that no one actually sent me a picture of where erosion had happened in a non-CTF system. But there was erosion in non-CTF systems as well. So it wasn't just CTF. But what it did highlight for us is this is something that we do need to consider and manage for the future, because our rainfall patterns are changing. So and it's been mentioned earlier today that we're tending to see less rainfall in winter and higher rainfall events in summer. And this is just one really practical example. So earlier this year I helped GRDC write some case studies on CTF, and there was a particular focus on some of the farms that had been impacted by CTF to put together the story so that we can learn from it and see how we can manage things better. So this is some data that Kirk Yates from Esperance put together for me when I asked if he could prove that his rainfall was different. So he took out his farm records and he looked back over 40 years. And it starts from 1979 up to this year in 2007. The yellow on this side is the total amount of summer rainfall that he received. And on the other side is the percent of rainfall. So the green line shows the percent of summer rainfall as a total of his annual rainfall. And what he's noticed is in the first 20 years since 1979, there was less than 40% of his annual rainfall fell in summer. But since 1979 up here, it's actually been 7 events where he's had greater than 40% of his more than 40% of his annual rainfall has been summer. And these events are often more intense and heavier and come down faster. So one of the challenges we have, I guess, in CTF is how to get the optimum CTF layout, because it is important that we look at efficiencies, and they've talked about that very well today. So it's about minimising the amount of turns, so often we'll pick the longest run, but you also need to manage how full the header gets before you have to unload on the chaser, and think about access points and perhaps water points for stock. But we also need to consider the risk of erosion, be it wind or water erosion, and find that balance that's going to get you the optimal system. And at the end of the day, we will design those systems probably for a 1 in 20 event, but what we need to make sure is that we design them properly and design them to fail safely, so that if you are getting these high rainfall events that are greater than a 1 in 20, you have a bit more control over where it's going to fail, and that should minimise the damage and help you perhaps fix it. Not fix it, but alleviate it a little bit. So these are some of the different data layers that you have, and I've put right at the top there farmer knowledge, because your knowledge of your paddocks and your system and your rainfall is incredibly important in anything that you do in farming. So it's about interpreting all these other layers of information in line with your farmer knowledge.